Divorcing you was definitely the right choice. You and your child are still just as sad as ever. I make $200,000 a year now. It seems like my ex-husband just wants to brag about himself. He doesn't even bother to ask about how we're doing. Oh, by the way, let me introduce you to someone. Hey, come here. This is my new wife, Harriet, he says, introducing me to his new spouse. What on earth is he thinking? Are we done here? Well then bye, I say, trying to leave. Wait a minute, he says, blocking my path again. Are you just jealous because we look happy? Just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be so twisted. You'll end up even more miserable, you know. He assumes that I'm unhappy. I'm past feeling angry and now just feel disgusted. While I stay silent, my ex tries to say something else. But my son Johnny interrupts. Mom, can we fire this guy? Hi, my name is Lisa, and I am now 42 years old. I married George, my co-worker at the same company, when I was 26. I continued to work after we got married but quit when I became pregnant. Later, our son Johnny was born. Now that Johnny has turned 7 and started elementary school, parenting has settled down a bit. I thought it might be time to start working outside the home again, so I talked to my husband about it. He agreed right away, almost like he was waiting for me to suggest it. He probably thinks it would help our household budget if I started working, but he's been rushing me about it. Have you found something yet? He asks. Not yet. I'm looking carefully, I reply. Just find something, he says, seeming to want me to work no matter what. When I mention looking for a part-time job, he suggests, if you're going to work, why not full-time? If that seems too much, it doesn't have to be 5 days a week. How about 3 days, 8 hours each? Johnny isn't completely independent just because he's in elementary school. He comes home early, you know. But my husband insists Johnny can go to after-school programs. Full-time 5 days a week would be best, he keeps recommending. He seems to want me to work long hours. I can't complain since I was the one who said I wanted to work. But I haven't worked in years, so I'm nervous. Ultimately, I'd like to get used to it gradually, even if I do work full-time. I feel bad about quitting if I find it too hard after trying. So for now, I've decided to work part-time, about 20 hours a week. My husband complained that full-time would be better right away, but he reluctantly agreed when I said I'd consider it if I could handle it. I didn't think he cares so much about our finances. I found him a bit nagging about my job search, but I was also pleased. It's better to have a spouse who considers the finances than one who's unconcerned about it, especially in a long-term relationship. But I would later realize this perception was mistaken. A few months after I started my part-time job, a message came to my phone. Wondering who it was, I checked and saw a very familiar name. My former colleague and also my husband's current colleague. I thought it had been a long time and casually read the message. Then I was so shocked by the content that I raised my voice. What? What does this mean? This must be a joke. The message said, long time no see. I saw your husband the other day looking very friendly with some woman. I thought he might be cheating, so I sent you this message. The message was informing me of my husband's affair. It even thoughtfully included pictures. I was deeply shaken. The person in the photograph was clearly my husband, and the woman he was arm in arm with was a stranger to me. Even if it was a woman I knew, being arm in arm like that would be totally wrong. As I was reeling from the shock of the photographs, another message was sent. This woman is actually the division manager's daughter. She's an employee at our company, so she of course knows your husband's married. They're so brazen, aren't they? I wonder if all young folks are like this now. It was obvious from my colleague's message that she was enjoying this gossip. I replied with thanks and closed the messaging app. I never thought my husband would cheat on me, but when I thought about it, many things started to make sense, especially how he had been pushing me to work hard even when I wasn't settled with childcare. He must have thought it would give him more time to cheat. And today, he's supposedly away on an overnight business trip. It's probably a lie to spend quality time with his mistress. The next day, when my husband came home, I confronted him immediately. I knew that if we were going to divorce, I should keep a straight face and gather evidence, but I couldn't pretend everything was okay. What is this all about? I demanded, showing him the picture. My husband was taken aback for a moment but quickly recovered and defiantly responded, if you know, then it can't be helped. It's exactly as you see. I was surprised. I had expected some kind of excuse. The woman is the division manager's daughter, right? I asked. The division manager is destined to move up even higher in the company. You understand what I'm saying. To be blunt, I'd gain more from marrying this woman. It would guarantee my promotion. She's younger and prettier than you two, he said with a disdainful expression. I thought that if he cried and apologized, I wouldn't go as far as divorcing him because of our child Johnny. But this attitude of his, what was this? He didn't seem to feel guilty about cheating at all. He even brazenly compared me to his mistress, saying she was better than me. Was he really this kind of man? I was so disappointed. As I remained silent, he grew more confident and continued. Well, that's how it is. I think we should divorce. It's a bit sooner than planned, but I was going to tell you eventually, so this is good timing. And so we divorced. After being told all that, I couldn't even pretend I didn't want to divorce. It was better for my mental health to quickly get the child support and divide the property and then divorce. He paid the child support at the amount I asked for, and he gave me almost all the property. Naturally, I got custody of Johnny. He was planning to marry the division manager's daughter. He seemed to feel that a little money was no big deal. When he left the house, he parted with the words, "Do your best to scrape by. Raising a child on a single income won't lead to wealth. Unlike you, I'm joining the ranks of the rich. The division manager's family is wealthy after all. We probably won't meet again, so struggle on at the bottom." Those were unbelievable words for a man who had a child of his own blood. I was relieved from the bottom of my heart to be rid of such a man. Although I felt relieved mentally, daily life was indeed hard. Even though I had received child support and property, I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard from now on. Working part-time alone just wasn't enough to get by. In the end, I had to quit my part-time job and started working full-time. I felt bad for Johnny, but after he finished elementary school, I had him go to after-school programs on his own. Unexpectedly, I found myself working full-time, and everything became challenging all at once. When I came home from my unfamiliar job, I had to do all the housework by myself. My life had completely changed from before. Time flew by as I was too busy every day. Before I knew it, 7 years had passed since my divorce. But no matter how busy I was, I adapted. Now that Johnny is in middle school, he can mostly take care of himself. I think he's grown into a very responsible boy compared to other boys his age, perhaps because I'm always so busy. He even does the cooking and laundry for me. Thanks to that, I've been free from housework and childcare. And for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and working life are going very well. Now I can say it clearly, I'm certainly glad I broke up with that awful man. If I had continued to be married to him, I wouldn't have this life now. But one day, while my son and I were shopping at the local mall, I ran into that terrible guy. It was my ex-husband, George. I didn't notice him, but he started talking to me. "Hey, isn't that you, Lisa? Long time no see. You've really aged." Is that what you say to someone you haven't seen in a while? I snapped. A person with normal sensitivity would never say that to a woman. It was clear he hadn't grown at all as a person. "Huh, you're the one who's aged a lot. I didn't recognize you for a moment." Honestly, George had aged a lot. I hadn't seen him for 7 years, but it felt like he aged twice as much. His hair was thinning and his belly was out, showing a complete middle-aged figure. I thought talking to my ex-husband was a waste of time, so I tried to walk away, saying, "Oh well, long time no see. But I don't really have anything to say to you. See you later." But he wouldn't let me go. He stood in my way and started talking nonsense. Hey, don't be so cold. The family is all together again. Let's catch up for a bit." I didn't want to hear anything about his life. If there was one thing I'd like to complain about, it was that he stopped paying child support a few years after our divorce. Child support is not my right but Johnny's right. The fact that he could talk so openly in front of Johnny, who was owed that money, made me irritated. But George didn't care about my mood at all. He started talking about his recent life, which I didn't want to hear. After our divorce, I remarried. I married the daughter of the manager who was in that picture with me. Oh, he's not a manager anymore. He's an executive now. And I got promoted to manager. I'm definitely winning now. To be honest, I didn't care how much George had been promoted. It had nothing to do with me, and I wasn't envious. All I thought was, why are you bragging about not paying child support even after being promoted? He's such a cheap man to not even pay a few $1,000s a month even though he's winning. And to rub it in even more, George continued his bragging. "Breaking up with you was the right choice. You and your son still look poor. I make $200,000 a year." In the end, George just wanted to brag about himself. He didn't even try to hear about our lives. I thought that any normal parent would be curious about their child's life. But he didn't even talk to Johnny, who was standing right in front of him. He's really a terrible father. Oh, that reminds me, let me introduce you to someone. Hey, George called over a woman who was looking at clothes in the distance. The woman came over, and I knew right away who she was. I had seen her in a picture before. It was George's new wife, Harriet. Meet my wife, Harriet. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you, isn't she? He said. What was he thinking? This woman stole my husband when we were married. I'm glad we're apart now. But back then, it was shocking, and I did resent it. I have no good impression of this woman at all. You'd think my ex-husband would know that, even though he's not the brightest. But he must be really looking down on us, not realizing how insulting this is. Oh, is that all? I don't have time. Bye-bye, I said, feeling extremely unpleasant. I didn't even glance at the woman, let alone greet her. Wait a minute, my ex-husband said, blocking my way again. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your home life. Jealous because we look happy? You're not just poor in money, don't be bitter in your heart too. You'll only get more miserable. My ex-husband arbitrarily decided that I'm unhappy. Mind your own business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The most unfortunate thing lately is being spoken to by you. Even though I said I was happy, my ex-husband didn't believe it at all and continued to worry about my situation. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but being poor isn't happy. Don't push yourself. It's probably impossible for you to remarry with those conditions. I'm worried about you as your ex-husband, you know. As he said this, his face showed an expression completely opposite to concern. He was making a complete fool of me. When I looked at the face of my ex-husband's wife standing next to him, she was also smirking, looking like she was making fun of me. I'll never be friends with this woman. She feels good by looking down on people. She's the worst kind of woman. I told you, you're way better. Have some confidence, George said, either sucking up to his current wife or praising her as the best compared to me. Well, he was promoted thanks to his current wife, so he's probably buttering her up whenever he can. He's really the worst man. You're really the lowest level of woman. I can't believe you were able to marry him. Harriet, my ex-husband's wife, insulted me even though we had just met. That's the worst kind of behavior. I wanted to leave the scene as soon as possible so I wouldn't retort, but my ex-husband stood in front of me, blocking my way. I'll tell you, we're still in love, so the chance of getting back together is zero. Don't get your hopes up for something wrong, he said. He seemed to be having some wild delusion, thinking I was still attached to him even though it's been 7 years since our divorce due to his affair. His head was so full of fantasies that I couldn't say anything. When I was at a loss for words because of my ex-husband's ridiculous delusion, he seemed to think he was right. Hey, too shocked to say anything. Being a popular man is tough. What's popular about a middle-aged man's appearance? I was past anger and starting to feel sick. When I remained silent, my ex-husband tried to say something more, but Johnny interrupted him. Mom, can you fire this guy? Huh? My ex-husband was dumbfounded by Johnny's incomprehensible words. It seemed Johnny was very angry, calling me this guy instead of Dad. Well, it doesn't matter, but what do you mean? I'm not getting fired, am I? You're in middle school now, study properly. He talked down to Johnny too. It's unforgivable that he was making fun of my beloved son as well. I was about to explode with anger at my ex-husband when I heard a voice calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man came over, calling out. My ex-husband froze when he saw the man's face. Why are you here, boss? He asked the man in front of him. I'm just here shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, but I was just wondering why you were talking to my ex-wife. Oh, that's natural. She's my current wife after all. What? Her? No, this is your wife, boss. I can't believe it. My ex-husband stammered. Actually, about 3 years ago, I remarried the CEO of my ex-husband's company. The CEO and I became close after my divorce when he approached me while I was shopping at the supermarket. Since I had previously worked at the same company as my ex-husband, I knew the CEO. The CEO knew that my ex-husband had an affair with the head of his department's daughter, leading to our divorce, and that he later married her. It seemed that the CEO was quite bitter about this as a fellow man. But he thought he couldn't meddle in an employee's private life until he saw me at the supermarket and impulsively spoke to me. I was very surprised since I knew the CEO, but I didn't think he would remember my face and name as just an ordinary employee. Perhaps he remembered me easily because I worked at the reception desk of the company. It seems your marriage didn't work out, but I'm sure you'll find someone better soon. CEO, I'm glad you remember me, but you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. At that time, I had been divorced for less than a year, so I was somewhat putting on a brave face. But the CEO, with his vast life experience, saw right through my act and comforted me with kind words. Divorce takes more than 3 times the effort of marriage. Even if you divorce smoothly, it's tiring. I've never been divorced, but I felt utterly unmotivated when I lost my wife to death. When a man and woman who once loved each other part ways, that's just how it is. So you don't need to put on a brave face. The CEO knew the loneliness of ending a married life. While I was glad to have separated, I was also feeling a whirlpool of emotions like loneliness and emptiness at the time, so his words touched my heart. If talking to someone like me helps, call me anytime. I'll treat you to dinner whenever you like, he said, handing me his business card. I thought it would be too bold to contact him for about 2 years. But as time passed, I calmed down and wanted someone to talk to again. So I finally decided to call the CEO. Despite his busy schedule, the CEO made time for me and treated me to dinner. When I was an employee, the CEO was still a department head, and he had an unapproachable aura since he was the previous CEO's son. But once we had dinner together, I found him easy to talk to, like a nice uncle. Perhaps because I was no longer an employee, the CEO and I quickly became good drinking buddies. Then, about a year passed, and the CEO proposed to me with a serious look. You're kidding, Steve. Don't joke like that. I thought it was a joke since he mentioned it while we were drinking, but the CEO was serious. At first, I wanted to encourage you after your divorce, but being with you really calms me down. I haven't felt this way since I lost my wife. Honestly, I feel like I'm the one being healed now. If you're willing, let's spend the rest of our lives together. Give me a day to think about it, I said and consulted with my son. I don't mind. You should decide based on whether you like him or not. Mom. Since there was no particular opposition, I decided to marry the CEO. To be honest, I liked him. I thought he was just a drinking buddy, but I also felt truly healed when I was with him. We both felt comforted, so I thought there was no obstacle to living together. When I heard the story about the president's deceased wife, I really understood that he loved her. Every time I heard that story, I thought how happy I would be if I could marry someone who loved me like that. To be honest, I even felt a little jealous of his wife. And so we became a happily married couple. The president really dotes on my son Johnny as if he were his own. Perhaps it's because the president had no children with his previous wife, but they get along so well that they look like a real father and son. I truly am happy now, just as I told my ex-husband. My ex-husband's face turned pale and he started trembling when he heard that I married the president. He never expected the husband of his poor ex-wife, who he looked down upon, to be the president. Dad, this man was mocking Mom. Fire him, Johnny tells the president about my ex-husband without mercy. Idiot. No, Johnny, what are you talking about? We were just chatting. My ex-husband tries to smooth things over, but it's clear to the president. You have a tendency to look down on people in the company. Johnny is probably telling the truth. I've heard some bad rumors about you from your subordinates. I think I'll investigate this, so be prepared. I never thought the president would take Johnny's words seriously and investigate the misdeeds within the company. My ex-husband apologizes to the president. I'm sorry, I might have been a bit harsh on your wife. Can you please hold off on the internal investigation? He's begging even in a crowded shopping mall, showing how much he doesn't want the investigation. But this is practically an admission of guilt. The president is not listening. No, I'm going to proceed. By the way, your close friend, the executive, has a bad reputation too. I'll investigate you both thoroughly. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's wife also apologizes. No, it's fine if it's just him, but my dad has nothing to do with it. If you must do it, please do it to him only. Hearing that line, my ex-husband started arguing with his wife on the spot. What do you mean? You're planning to abandon me? Don't joke around. There are plenty of men like you. Of course my dad is more important. It's said that one should not interfere in lovers' quarrels, and it's completely shameful. We don't want to be associated with them. So we ignored the arguing ex-couple and left the store. Those selfish people will probably have trouble from now on, but it's their own fault. The president immediately organized a team to thoroughly investigate my ex-husband and the executive's work the next day. All the things that came out: harassment of subordinates, countless verbal abuses, favoritism, and worst of all, forcing clients to entertain them. It was an astonishing number of incidents happening over many years. Abusing a strong position to demand entertainment is totally inappropriate in this day and age. This attitude of exploiting their position for personal gain is completely out of line. My ex-husband and the executive were demoted and sent to a branch office in Nebraska. They probably knew this would happen, so they apologized again and again in the shopping mall. This means they knew they were doing wrong. Knowing and doing it anyway makes it malicious. They'll probably never get promoted again. According to the president, they both ended up resigning from the company. They were probably afraid of retaliation from the employees they had harassed and were now ordinary workers. However, it didn't end with just quitting. They were sued by the employees they had harassed. Since they were disliked by almost all the employees, there was a lot of evidence, and they completely lost in court. They were charged with enormous compensation and ended up in debt. The ex-husband's wife, whose family became poor, seems to have blamed her husband, and their marriage turned sour. They ended up divorcing soon after. Every day they argued, and the ex-husband took it out on his wife. So she might even sue him for damages, and the situation could become a legal quagmire. Seeing the downfall of my ex-husband makes me realize that it's best to live honestly and sincerely in this world. I was able to conceive a child with the president. I'm 42, so it's a late childbirth, but a healthy baby was born, so I'm relieved. Johnny seems very happy to become a big brother and takes good care of the baby, even feeding the baby milk every day. Steve is talking ahead of time, hoping that Johnny will grow up and help build the company. We're both getting older, so raising a child will be hard, but the fear flies away when I look at the baby's sleeping face. Thank you for being born. Mom's gonna work hard, I think, as I face the day.